Hello, class. Um, I will be discussing my article for the Google Slideshow presentation. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Let me turn on a light because I know my room is very dark. It's early in the morning, and I'm doing this. So, you know what? Let's get started. Let's get started. So, Content Lit Vocabulary Research Analysis Project featuring Christopher Canales. So, I did my article on what reading teachers say about vocabulary instruction, voices from the classroom. I thought this article was very interesting because I thought that this article really talked about a topic that's not discussed too much in the classroom, and that topic of discussion is oh, here it is. Here it is. The topic of discussion is vocabulary use in the classroom. And I think that vocabulary is not really talked about too much in the classroom. I haven't really heard an emphasis on vocabulary, words, and usage really at all when I was in school. I think a big reason for this is that there a lot of the goals and standards that are set are trying to hold on, let me just fix that. I didn't realize that before. I apologize. That is not professional. But a lot of the standards goals that we talk about are more individual tasks in the Common Core and the New York State standards, and vocabulary really gets overlooked a lot. So in this article, it's an 11-page article, it talks about the survey of the vocabulary instruction and how we can integrate vocabulary instruction into the classroom. So the article really talks about it surveyed teachers from kindergarten to college that were involved in the survey. So it took a wide array of different types of teachers that were in the survey. So elementary school, middle school, high school, and reading specialists were all involved in the survey. All these different types of teachers were involved in the survey. I'm doing a presentation. Thank you, grandmother. Sorry. All right, I got it. So sorry about that. So yeah, all these teachers were involved in the survey. So what was the purpose of this research? What was the purpose of the survey? You might ask. What were they trying to find out? So I believe the main purpose of the author's work in this article is to survey educators to find a new ways to increase vocabulary in young readers. I found it really interesting. Over the past 23 years, the acquisition of large vocabulary from students has dramatically declined. Dramatically declined. Even in 1997, vocabulary in terms of teaching and expanding and making a real note of was considered cold by vocabulary standards, which means vocabulary wasn't really considered an essential part of learning. And I have a piece of ancient art in my house right now, my grandmother. So grandma, when you were in school, what did the teachers really stress vocabulary in school, like learning different words and incorporating them and spelling and what do you
Yes.
think since you were born in 1899?
I'm gonna smack your face. Yes, we had to learn vocabulary.
Because vocabulary since 1997 was considered dead. They're so focused on this individual standards of learning that vocabulary is considered not as important anymore. Isn't that crazy?
Why?
Because everybody cares. They all care about the standards. They don't care about really teaching kids language and learning and different words and stuff.
Shut that light.
All right. Thank you for your help.
Uh,
Appreciate it. The purpose of the office work is trying to find new ways to integrate and improve vocabulary in young readers. Vocabulary is very important because it's one of the most essential pillars of understanding curriculum. The aim was to first find out why vocabulary advancement has stalled over the last 23 years. The second aim was to find methods to increase vocabulary in young readers. So I took away a couple of research questions that I found to be very important, or at least very striking. So one of them was, what are your biggest concerns about vocabulary instruction in your school, your district, school, or classroom? What are the resources, books, videos, articles, materials, and others that have been most helpful for you in carrying out your work? Very interesting, Grandma, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to go to the next slide. I have to get water real quick. I apologize. I'm making a video for class. Okay, here we go. Next slide. Participants. So you might ask, who is being studied in this survey? Why is this study important? Who is getting talked about here? So 72 educators responded to the survey. 51 of the educators were from professional meetings, and the other 21 were from the list server. So what that means is if we go back to the article, we can find, let's make sure it's in the box. You can see everything there. Let's go back to the article real quick. Excuse me, sorry for the burp. Inappropriate. No. We're interested in response about the article in the classroom, teachers, professionals, reading code, and think about the topics. Thus, we surveyed a group of educators attending a professional meeting where the topic was vocabulary. In addition, surveys went out electronically to a listserv. Additionally, surveys went out electronically to a server list of reading educators in our area. So some of them were part of this group study, and some of them were emailed on a server list to educators, and they got to take it online. Very, very interesting stuff here. So back to this. They were made, and like I said before, in the last slide, the participants were made up of teachers who served from kindergarten to college, between elementary, secondary, high school, and reading specialists. So all of the above was put in. 56 were elementary school teachers, 75 having 6 or more years of experience, 75% of them having 6 more years of experience. 47 were classroom teachers in elementary or secondary school out of the 72, and 24 were reading specialists. Very important to note that. Let's go back to present. Actually, I'm going to keep it there just so, because I don't know if it will, I don't know if I do that, if it'll not show the slides. So I want to make sure that you guys see the slides and see that it's right there. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. I'm talking to my classroom and my teacher, Grandmother. Any problems? Okay, thank you. Research methodology, data. What data did the researchers collect? The researchers found response designed to teach vocabulary through explicit instruction, creating a word-rich environment by using word walls and word analysis. So explicit instruction using different methodologies and different methods really help, get vocabulary ingrained in students' heads. And obviously reading does. Reading is a big one, reading books that have high quality. Literature and empirical evidence to further extend student vocabulary. Not in this article, but I read another article about reading new words and new student words. When students read a book, in just one book, they read over 100,000 new words, and over those 100,000 words, at least between 3 and 1,000 they retain in their head. So one book contains 300 new words that you can retain in your head, which is, expanding your vocabulary and is helping you with a lot of things. We'll get into that in the next couple slides. Reading books like Macbeth, for example, will expand students' vocabulary in English because it's another one. I apologize. I'm just seeing this now because they are not used to reading Old English. So, like books like Macbeth have a lot of different vocabulary in it that would really help expand a child's vocabulary. I haven't read it in a long time, Macbeth, and I didn't personally like Macbeth, but it had a lot of rich vocabulary in there that really could help students learn and help them. Um, so, wordplay or word games is also an important method of getting students to expand the vocabulary. Playing rhyming games such as pick a word that rhymes with the place helps us start expanding students' vocabulary usage. I think rhyming words is great. I make music and I rhyme words together. So, I mean, just that process alone, on top of reading, has really helped my vocabulary just expand tenfold. So, very, very, very interesting stuff. Research mythology process. The data was collected by teachers across multiple grades. The article didn't clearly state the length of the survey or when it started or ended. The article mostly talked about the way the survey was being conducted rather than talking about how long it took. Not took. Took is not a word. Yeah, I mean, maybe I glanced over it accidentally, but it didn't really say how long the survey was. It just mentioned the different parts of the survey, so I wasn't really too, I couldn't really write too much about that. Okay. When was when was the data collected? Was there a instructional strategy or program being tested? If so, describe. Remember, the researchers offered to write an outline of professional development for teachers who want to have a sound vocabulary method to teach with children. Wow, I did not realize the amount of spelling errors here. I apologize. The best way to develop an instructional strategy is to have teachers work together and enable encounters with diverse practices and diverse teacher knowledge. I thought this was very important because the big part of the teachers was really making a sound curriculum for the district, not the time that was being put in it. That was the hardest part, was having one solid district-wide vocabulary method to teach, and that was missing. That's usually missing nowadays, unfortunately, because teachers like to focus, not teachers, but the administrators and state likes to focus on other things like testing, which I think is not a fair indicator of how well a student will succeed in their life. What did researchers find from their study? Researchers found the biggest concern among teachers, like I said, was the amount of time that not the amount of time that they had to teach it, but the lack of coherent district-wide vocabulary practices, which limited the amount of vocabulary that they could teach. Teachers felt that their own methods of teaching, building vocabulary skills could go against the district standards. This response relates directly to the bottom research quote below. What are your biggest concerns about vocabulary instruction in your district, school, or classroom? So what should we take away from this study? How should the findings influence our roles as teachers in the classroom? Teachers, specialists, parents, teachers, leaders, all of that good stuff. As vocabulary leaders, an important piece of information we could take out is how important vocabulary it is. It's the cornerstone of curriculum and literacy. Without a wide range of vocabulary skills, other skills become limited. The ability to argue a case, to finish essays, to elaborate on important ideas, the ability to read becomes limited. It is important that districts have a comprehensive plan teaching vocabulary. Teachers and administrators need to come together to create these plans that will enhance vocabulary usage in the classroom and turn this cold period into a hot period. Language. Would this study make you wonder? This study made me wonder if vocabulary would ever become a primary focus of educators again. I wonder if this cold period would ever end and fluency would take over. You know, you need it for jobs and everything, jobs, business presentations,